Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Lissa Rankin, and I wanted to talk to you today a little bit about overfunctioning and how we relate with underfunctioning. And those two terms, which can be a little sort of uh, rocky to throw around, were described first by Murray Bowen, who created Bowen Family Systems Theory. The reason I don't love the term is because, well, who would you rather be? Would you rather be the overfunctioner or the underfunctioner? It kind of sounds like the overfunctioner is the better one and the underfunctioner is the worse one. So there's a little bit of sort of judgment built into the terms. But since they were created and are all over the internet, we'll use them just to discuss this issue for right now. So, overfunctioning is when one person habitually takes on more responsibility, is often kind of controlling more of the domains of life, especially domestic life, or is over caretaking or over giving in a relationship. And they're basically giving more than is appropriate, often trying to hold it all together for everyone else. So yes, these people are high functioning, competent, and responsible. But if you're on the other side of one of these people, you often would probably describe them also as critical or shrill or nagging or resentful or burned out. Um, and so sadly, they kind of come together because they're doing more than they're capable of actually tolerating a lot of the time. So overfunctioners tend to anticipate other people's needs before they're expressed. We may give advice or unsolicited advice or take action uninvited in ways that may feel meddling or intrusive. Or people may also feel really grateful for the overfunctioning because they're like, wow, you rescued me, you saved me. So it depends on the dynamic. Overfunctioners often feel anxious when others are disorganized or struggling or frustrated or showing any distress in trying to function. So they're quick to step in. And then later they're sort of complaining and critical, why don't you help out more? We often believe, often unconsciously, that things will completely fall apart if we don't step in. So there's a bit of grandiosity in that, like the whole system would fall apart if it wasn't for me. And maybe it would, but often overfunctioners aren't going to let it get to that point. So they're stepping in a catastrophizing imagination about what would happen if they didn't do everything. And then they often feel burned out and resentful while minimizing our own needs. I say they, I should be saying our, because I definitely can tend towards the overfunctioning. So, what do we advise for overfunctioners? First of all, you're right. You are doing too much. It is not fair. And the way that we overfunction is usually not effective. It usually is not healthy for a functional relationship. And the problem is we escalate, right? We feel like we're fine doing it until we're not. And then we escalate. We're lecturing, we're nagging, we're controlling, we're micromanaging, we're shaming somebody, we're disapproving of them. The dynamic becomes like, bossy mother, resistant son, or, controlling father, rebellious girl, or whatever the LGBTQ variant of that is. It's certainly not a gendered dynamic. But the thing is, you're trying to control someone else's behavior with your disapproval, which doesn't work ever. Like, it never has worked to disapprove of somebody until they do better. Especially if people have issues with shame and they struggle with shame resilience, and maybe they had a perpetrator's shame put on them during childhood trauma, and any sense of feeling bad or feeling not good enough or feeling unworthy or feeling incompetent or feeling like a failure can activate all kinds of defensive reactions. So they're not actually able to listen a lot of the time. So the overfunctioning partner, again, usually they're right about the facts. Our partner is underfunctioning, is not pulling their weight, is avoiding responsibility, is acting like a child maybe, and they're possibly also gaslighting, lying, trying to evade consequences, trying to avoid accountability, like slippery as hell, trying to get away from whatever feels like this critical blaming. But the problem is, even if we're right, being right is not enough. As Terry Real, the founder of Relational Life Therapy, would say, like, being right is a losing strategy. So when we escalate, when we lecture and nag and control and micromanage and shame someone to try to get our disapproval to make them do better, um, that is when an underfunctioner is likely to resist and dig their heels in and collapse, or go into this, oh, I'm such a loser, I'm a terrible partner, this sort of self-absorbed shame pit where it's all about me and how bad I am. And then that can actually increase a sense of helplessness, or decrease functionality, and actually create even more struggle with competency, which reinforces the very pattern that the critical partner is trying to escape. So, what do we say to the overfunctioner? Well, yes, you're carrying too much, and that's not okay. But every time you do for your partner what they could or should do for themselves, you make the problem worse. You cannot complain about what you enable. You have to dismount from that moral superiority, because you cannot heal from the one up position. You can't have intimacy from that one up position. So, your strategy to fix it, to criticize, to control, to moralize is part of the problem. If you're in shrill mode, and you know what I mean, especially those that are on the other side of that know what I mean, your partner will hear attack, not request, even if you think you're being calm in the way you're making a request. Calm clarity is more effective than righteous, moralizing rage. So if you can, pause before you react. Practice relational mindfulness. Regulate yourself first. And you have to stop overfunctioning. You have to just stop doing it. Like, drop the rope, let it go. All those balls you're juggling with all of your mental load, keep the ones in the air that are going to directly affect you, because you don't want to have to go down with the ship. But notice which balls you can drop, and give the other person the opportunity to pick up those balls and start juggling. As long as you're overfunctioning, doing it for them, as long as you're protecting them from the consequences of having those balls drop, then there's not a whole lot of motivation to get them to pick up those balls and give you a little bit of a break. So stop rescuing. Let them feel the impact of their own behavior. And I know it's hard, especially if it impacts the kids, especially if it impacts you. And so certainly couples therapy can help you kind of negotiate some of those agreements. But do notice where your impulse to step in is not so much about helping the other person from an altruistic place, but about avoiding the discomfort that you feel when you see somebody else struggling, or when something isn't getting done, or when your expectations are just too high, and you're imposing your expectations on somebody else who might not have the same expectations. So sometimes you have to adjust your expectations, especially if underfunctioning is ADHD related rather than entitlement related. And those are two different things we can talk about separately. So, try replacing complaints with requests. A complaint is like, you never help out with the kids. A request is, would you please take the kids for an hour so that I can take a rest? Many overfunctioners are masters of complaint, but we struggle to make clean, empowered requests, because we feel more empowered actually when we're complaining. We feel more grandiose and moralizing and one up than when we're making a vulnerable request that somebody else might reject. Then when we're in that vulnerable place of connection, it can actually feel more uncomfortable. So that's just a little bit about overfunctioning. I just taught a class about overfunctioning and underfunctioning for Love School, and we did a whole 2 hours working with internal family systems and the parts that are involved in these strategies for adapting to developmental trauma. Usually the overfunctioner is often the parentified child from childhood, and the underfunctioner is often the person who didn't get to really grow up, who wasn't given enough responsibilities, wasn't held accountable. Or an overfunctioner can get burned out and become an underfunctioner. So we talk a lot more about it in Love School, which you can find at lissarankin.com. We always welcome new members. And if this was helpful, please subscribe to this YouTube channel and pass it along and share it with anybody that you think might benefit from it. Thank you so much.